Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. In this video, we're going to look at what's going on in Israel, and it seems like things are just getting ready to blow up. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you've gotten in a fight with somebody, things start escalating, and then there's a point of no return, and you kind of like see that coming. There's a period of time in which you can still make a decision, but maybe you're already on the slippery slope and it's all but inevitable. And I think that that's what we're seeing right now. Israel has not yet invaded the Gaza Strip with ground forces. There's been like a few little incursions from what I understand, but like a main invasion force has not taken place yet. And it makes me think of those situations. I've had situations like that in my life where it's like, you have just like 1 second to think, to stop and think and be like, okay, do I really want to do this? Because if I do it, then things are going to get a lot worse after this. And I think there's a lot of different, well, frankly, like I've said before, I think it's been planned out. I think that Iran and by extension, Hezbollah are waiting and expecting Israel to go ahead and do this so that they can jump in and so that they can escalate things. So we're in that like brief moment of time where, I mean, I'm not expecting Israel not to invade. I don't know what the right answer is or how, if there's any other solution other than invading and taking out Hamas. But it just feels like one of those moments, and it feels like to me like we are seconds, not even minutes at this point, seconds to midnight and the second coming and the final war and the final battle. So we're going to look at some of the things that have been said, and then toward the end of the video, I want to tackle the last misconception on my common misconceptions spreadsheet, is that we have to be righteous enough before Christ will return. And related to that is the world is not wicked enough. They're both really the same thing. In fact, I should retype this and add both. We have to be righteous enough, or the world has to be wicked enough before Christ will return. Neither of which are true, and I'm about to show you why. But that'll be toward the end. Before we get into Israel, I'm sure you've heard, but if you haven't, President Eyring's wife, Kathleen Johnson Eyring, passed away. This was put out yesterday, and I don't really follow up on everybody's wives or their health or anything like that, so I can't say it's a surprise. It still kind of shocked me, just given how recently Elder Holland's wife passed away. So I don't know. It's very sad. So, but prayers for President Eyring. May he live for a long time, and may he live to see the second coming. This last conference, he kind of spoke like he didn't think he's going to see the second coming, but I hope that he does. So I'll leave the link for this in the description below in case you want to read more. But again, prayers for President Eyring and his family and loved ones. Okay, so let's talk about Iran, and let's talk about how this could turn into something really big, whether it's a regional war or maybe even beyond that. Okay, so this is from Fox News. Iran threatens Israel over looming ground offensive in Gaza. All right. Iran's foreign minister has warned that an Israeli ground offensive in Gaza would force Iran to intervene, likely expanding the war to other parts of the Middle East, according to a report. Again, I think that that's planned. I think that ever since the inception of this idea of Hamas to, do that attack on the 7th of October, that was the plan. It had to be really bad, had to be really gruesome, had to be really upsetting. It had to be to such an extent that they would essentially force Israel's hand and force them to invade Gaza, so that when Iran, quote unquote, intervenes, it looks like they have more justification. In fact, I didn't pull this up, but I saw this earlier today that China already feels, or China is saying out loud that Israel is getting to that point where they're uh, going beyond what's justified in their response, which of course I don't agree with. I'm sure most of you don't either. But the more Israel does, the more justification the enemies of Israel feel like they have, and the more people in the middle, I think, they can win to their side, to the side of Iran, Russia, China, you know, that axis essentially. So I think that Israel or Iran at this point, they're in their mind, they're showing to the world, look, we're not intervening. We could have done it in the beginning, but we're going to be reasonable. See, everybody, we're being reasonable. We're warning them ahead of time, full well knowing that there is no turning back for Israel. It's just empty words, and it's just to try and make themselves look bad or look good. All right, let's continue. Hossein Amirabdollahian made the comment during a meeting with United Nations envoy to the Middle East, Tor Wennesland on Saturday in Beirut, Axios reported, citing two diplomatic sources with knowledge of the situation. The sources told the outlet that Abdollahian said Iran doesn't want the conflict to spill over to the other parts of the region, but insisted that Iran will have to respond if the Israeli operation continues in Gaza. So they're trying to seem like they have the moral high ground. They don't want this, even though they planned it. An Israeli ground assault on Gaza was looming on Sunday after Hamas militants launched a surprise attack on October 7th that killed 1,300 Israelis, most of them civilians, and took dozens of hostages back to Gaza. The Gaza Health Ministry said more than 2,300 Palestinians have been killed since the fighting erupted. Really quick, let's go to my spreadsheet where I'm keeping track of these different wars and conflicts in Israel's history. So on the Palestinian side, it's still kind of unclear to me how many total, because that number that I just read on the Fox News article, I think that's referring to since the airstrikes began, in not including the terrorists that were killed during their operation on the 7th of October in the few days afterward, as Israeli forces were eliminating them, because that seems to be two separate numbers. The numbers that have been killed in Gaza plus the attackers on the 7th of October. The best that I can tell is when you put those two numbers together, it's somewhere near the 3,000 range. And then for Israel, I think this total includes soldiers and civilians. I kind of got some specificity here, but it's basically 1,300, like the article said. So I've updated this because before I had it at like 1,200. So pay attention to this column F, okay, 1,300. We're just going to focus on Israel and compare this to other wars. Okay, so here's the most recent one, 1,300 this year. We're already past the numbers of those that were killed during the second Intifada at the turn of the millennium. And you have to go all the way back to the Yom Kippur War in 1973, 50 years ago. That one still has more Israeli deaths than what's happening now. But as we've seen, this is only the beginning. If I were to guess, my non-expert analysis would be it's probably going to beat out the Yom Kippur War. I'm going to show you why. It's not just because I'm just randomly guessing. I'm going to show you something that would lead me to believe that. What the experts predict is going to happen during the ground invasion. So, but anyway, they're getting pretty close. Well, and when I say close, relatively close, it's already halfway there. Okay. And then go back to 1967 with the War of Attrition. That was at 1600. So right now, this is in third place, the War of Attrition, which started in 1967. But the current war is getting very close to matching this. And like I said, I think it's going to pass this up and the Yom Kippur War. And then the deadliest one was the War of Independence in 1947 with about 6,000. So War of Independence is in the number 1 spot. Yom Kippur War, number 2. War of Attrition currently at number 3. But this could change literally within the next 24 to 48 hours if the ground invasion begins within this time frame, and it seems like it probably will. So as of right now, at the time that I'm recording this current war, and it is an official war, it was officially declared, the first officially declared war in Israel since the Yom Kippur War. It is already at the very beginning of it in the number 4 spot. So again, just in case there's anybody that still doubts how serious this is, that this could be the final war, that it's different than all these other conflicts, it is. It is very different than the other ones. Okay, now, Meir Tamari told reporters in Beirut that Lebanon-based Hezbollah has considered all the scenarios of a war and that Israel should end its attacks on Gaza as soon as possible. Hezbollah, a terrorist group, is supported by Iran. Okay, just as a reminder, Hezbollah is up here in Lebanon. There has been some back and forth between Hezbollah and Israeli forces, but not much to speak of, really. The main fight up here has not started yet. And then down here in the Gaza Strip, this is where Hamas is. They're the ones that launched that attack. Okay. So this is getting ready to go off with the ground invasion. And then once the ground invasion starts, most likely Hezbollah is going to jump in, as well as potentially Iran, which I don't know. I suppose that Iran would. It seems like Iraq is kind of aligned with Iran in Syria as well. So maybe it'd be easy to move troops through Iraq and Syria and then down through Lebanon or Syria into Israel. I don't know. I don't know enough. I don't think Jordan, my sense is that Jordan would not allow troops to pass through. So I don't know how it would go, but most likely through here, through Syria and Lebanon. Okay, so this is a quote from Meir Tamari. He says, "I know about the scenarios that Hezbollah has put in place. Any step the resistance, Hezbollah, will take will cause a huge earthquake in the Zionist entity." So, I mean, what does that mean? Does it mean all their rockets? Because they do have a lot of rockets. I don't know. Do they have other weapons? Has Iran or others supplied them with different weapons? I don't know. Hezbollah fighters have been readied along Lebanon's borders with Israel, with both sides exchanging fire on multiple occasions since the Hamas attack. Now, I actually have a map I can show you that I've always felt is pretty accurate. This is through liveuamap.com. And so here we are on the northern border of Israel with Lebanon. And you see all these blue icons right here that look like a target. Okay, according to this is 11 hours ago. And I've seen this in other places, so I do believe that this is actually the case. Joint Ministry of Defense and IDF announcement. The National Emergency Management Authority, or NEMA, of the Ministry of Defense and the IDF are announcing the implementation of a plan to evacuate residents of northern Israel who live in the area up to 2 kilometers from the Lebanese border. So I think that's what each one of these represents. Like each one of these represents a community within 2 kilometers of the Lebanese border, and therefore um, areas that would be evacuated. So all along the border, that's kind of crazy. And then they do show some clashes right here, as indicated by these red icons. Here's like a blue one with like a bombing. Here's a drone. You know, I'm not going to get into that. But, you know, it's like first we're waiting for this to happen down here. This is like, it seems like it's imminent. And then we're also waiting for this to happen up here. They're already anticipating it. All right, so let's get back to this. Okay, quote from Amir Abdolian. I want to warn the war criminals and those who support this entity before it's too late to stop the crimes against civilians in Gaza, because it might be too late in a few hours. So, yeah, them trying to take appear as though they're taking the high ground, that they're showing restraint, that they don't want to join this war. Again, there's enough to suggest, I think, that they organized the entire thing. Okay, anyway, let's go on to this article from The Guardian. The peril now facing us. Israel invades, Iran intervenes, and this war goes global. Well, let's hope not. Okay. A high-risk, full-scale ground offensive into northern Gaza is imminent. Escalation begets escalation. The U.S. says its decision to deploy a second aircraft carrier group in the eastern Mediterranean is needed, or is intended to bolster Israel's security and, quote, deter any state or non-state actor, end quote, from widening the conflict. Yeah, I don't know if you saw that. There's already the USS Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier strike group that's in the eastern Mediterranean. But now there's a second one that's on its way. And I can't remember who, the USS Eisenhower. The USS Eisenhower carrier strike group. So now there's going to be 2. So the United States is bolstering its presence. And it's anybody's guess if somehow the U.S. will be involved. I mean, it will be in some ways. I'm about to show you that toward the end, because there's not just this, but there's something like, what did it say? 2,000 U.S. troops that are being deployed, not to be like ground troops or not to like directly participate, but okay. Well, anyway, okay. That vague wording conceals a world of anxiety about a possible head-on collision with Iran. Iran is the quote-unquote state actor that controls and coordinates the quote-unquote non-state actors, Hamas and the militant group Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza, Tehran-affiliated militias in Syria, Iraq, and Yemen, and the most powerful of them all, Lebanon's Hezbollah, the quote-unquote party of God. This is what Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, calls the quote-unquote axis of resistance. Iran undoubtedly views the additional deployment as an American escalation. It appears to be placing its militias on notice that new war fronts may soon open up. Israel is already fending off daily, limited Hezbollah cross-border attacks in the north and is warning of the quote-unquote destruction of Lebanon if the militias join Hamas's war. Let's go to the map here. So, one thing that's already happened, and I think I mentioned this in a previous video, is that with Syria, for example, Israel has reportedly bombed the main airport in Damascus, the capital city right here. and then up in Aleppo up here. So Israel's already attacked Syria. It's been attacking targets in Lebanon. But just think about this. If things escalate with Syria or Lebanon, then these are two countries. These are two more potentially state actors. If this thing escalates, I feel like most likely it would be Iran, Syria, Lebanon. I don't know if Iraq would ever do anything, or if the Taliban is still planning on making it all the way over to Jerusalem if they have enough money. I'm sure they probably do. They figure out a way. But you can see the potential for escalation with these countries, and then as well as, like what the article just said, these different terrorist groups in these different countries, including down in Yemen. I don't know how they would get up there, if they have the money, the funding, or if Iran would help them with their logistics. But okay, so yeah, things are getting really crazy. Okay, that's it for this article. Let's go to this Guardian article. U.S. deploys second aircraft carrier as Israeli ground invasion of Gaza nears. Oh, I guess I already pulled this up and then didn't highlight anything. Okay, whatever, it's fine. We talked about it. Oh, no. That I pulled this up. I clicked on the link. Okay, sorry, I'm getting myself confused. Reuters: Israel warns Hezbollah to stay out of Gaza war. Okay, Jerusalem. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's national security advisor said on Saturday hostilities with Lebanese Hezbollah, in parallel with the Gaza war, appeared to be restrained, and warned the group not to take action that could lead to Lebanon's quote-unquote destruction. Okay, quote, "We hope Hezbollah won't de facto bring about the destruction of Lebanon, because if there is a war there, the result will be no less." End quote. Who's this that's talking? Speaking after precursor. I don't care. It's some Israeli official alluding to long-standing Israeli threats to launch heavy strikes on the country in a bid to stem launches of Hezbollah's extensive missile arsenal. All right, Times of Israel. Iran claims Hamas willing to release hostages if Israel ends airstrikes on Gaza. So here's yet another thing. They're really going after this image-seeking campaign, this like publicity thing where it's like, no, we really don't want this. We're trying to be as reasonable as possible. Like, look, stop the airstrikes, and then they're going to release the hostages. You don't have to do this. You don't have to invade the Gaza. You see how they're like doing all these like different things so that anyone that's hostile toward Israel or on the fence will be like, look, stop. They're de-escalating. You need to de-escalate. You shouldn't do the ground invasion. Israel's being put in a really bad spot. And unfortunately, I think they're right. I think they do have to invade Gaza and destroy all of Hamas, because if they don't, it's just going to be a never-ending thing forever. There's got to be a point where there's a permanent solution. And this is probably the best bet that they have, is completely destroying Hamas. Let me read some of this. Iran's foreign ministry says that Hamas potentially was ready to release the nearly 200 hostages it is holding if Israel stops its campaign of airstrikes on the Gaza Strip. The terror group hasn't acknowledged making such an offer. Iranian foreign minister spokesman Nasser Kanani speaks at a news conference in Tehran. Iran is a main sponsor of Hamas and its fight against Israel. Hamas officials, quote, stated that they are ready to take the necessary measures to release the citizens and civilians held by resistance groups, but their point was that such measures require preparations that are impossible under daily bombardment by the Zionist by the Zionists against various parts of Gaza, end quote, according to Kanani. Hamas has said it will trade the captives for thousands of Palestinians held by Israel in the kind of lopsided exchange deals that have been reached in the past. Quote, we heard from the resistance that they have no problem to continue resisting. They said the resistance holds the military capability to continue resisting in the field for a long time. Well, I guess we'll see. So anyway, so they're offering to do prisoner swaps, which aren't really fair because it'd be like one for who knows what, 10, 100, 1 to 100 exchange. I don't know. But they're making the case that they're being reasonable. Israel 365 News, Israeli intel minister, Gaza offensive, quote unquote, just beginning. Okay. Quote, Hamas terrorists will have nowhere to hide. Anywhere there are terrorists in Gaza will be turned into ruins, says Israel's intelligence minister. Israel's military operation against Hamas was, quote unquote, just beginning, and that the Islamic terror organization would be destroyed, Israeli intelligence minister Gila Gamliel said on Friday. Yeah, so here's the thing. Circling back around to how I started this video, talking about that moment where you can make a decision. I don't think that it's an option for them not to invade Gaza. The reason why is because we've talked about why, because they have to bring about some kind of permanent solution if possible. But secondly, there seems to be all sorts of indications that there's nothing that's going to stop it. Benjamin Netanyahu has brought it up a number of times. He talked about how every member of Hamas is a dead man. Like they literally intend to kill everybody that is part of Hamas. He's been talking to troops, telling them that, the time is coming. They're, very soon they're going to be in there. So in my view, it's inevitable. This is absolutely going to happen. And therefore, in turn, attacks from Hezbollah in the north with all their rockets and whatever else they have, and I guess as well, Iran in some way, it is going to happen. And if Iran gets involved, the U.S. Has sent these aircraft carrier strike groups to, I don't know, to prevent that. I don't know what they would do exactly. If they would strike targets in Iran, I don't know what they would do. But again, I think we're seconds to midnight. Okay, Shin Bet chief. There is no time limit on this war. I think Shin Bet, it's not the Mossad. The Mossad is like the Israeli CIA. Shin Bet, is that some other... What is it? Shin Bet is one of the three principal organizations of the Israeli intelligence community, alongside Aman, military intelligence, and Mossad, foreign intelligence. Let's see. Where was that? Okay, whatever. So they're one of their intelligence agencies. So, Shin Bet chief, there is no time limit on this war. Shin Bet director Ronan Bar on Monday said there was no time limit or limit of power on Israel regarding the punishment it will bring to bear on Hamas for its invasion of the South on October 7th and ensuring the end of the terror group. Quote, we are at war, not in another round of lower scale conflict. In a round, you win with the perception of victory and achieving quiet. In a war, you conclude with a decisive win by altering the situation. There are no limiting lines and no time limit until the end, said Barr. You see how seriously they're talking? Again, let's go back to this. Look at all these conflicts going back to 1973, the Yom Kippur War. In fact, there was the first Lebanon War and the second Lebanon War. But even though they were called wars, war wasn't officially declared by the Knesset. We read that in a recent video, how not since the Yom Kippur War has war officially been declared by the government. You know, just one other thing that sets this apart from all the rest of these. It's not the same. These things are not the same as this thing that we're seeing right now. Okay, Jerusalem Post. Why has the Gaza ground invasion been delayed since Friday? Yeah. So I don't know how closely you've been following it. Let me know in the comments below. Have you been following it closely, or are you just watching my channel? Are you watching the news? What are you doing? And I'd also like to know, like, those around you, do they seem to be watching this? It was interesting because on Sunday there was somebody in the prayer in sacrament meeting that mentioned Israel. So I wasn't quite expecting that. So I know that there are people around me that are watching. I'm wondering how many are, though. You know, like, let's say things get really crazy within a week or within 2-3 weeks. You know, you look at the world around you, things are still going on. People are still going to work. People are still living their lives. And yet we may be looking at the final war, Gog and Magog, right now as we speak. And so many people are none the wiser. Let me know what you're noticing in your circles. But anyway, as of right now, and I'm recording this on Monday, the 16th at 3:01 p.m. Central Time, the ground invasion has not started. And it seems like it would have started within like the last 24 hours, potentially. The IDF gave the people of Gaza a time frame to evacuate to the south. In case you didn't catch that video, there is a line here somewhere, like right about here, where the Israeli military instructed everybody north of that line to evacuate south, because this whole area, Gaza City, and I would have supposed the surrounding areas like Jabalia and these other places, is going to become a battlefield. So, in fact, I have something to show you in regards to the evacuation, because Hamas didn't want the citizens of Gaza to leave. You know, because they want this to be as bloody as possible and to get as much outrage throughout the Islamic world and the world at large against Israel's war. So they want them to stay and die so that there will be outrage. And, you know, I guess as human shields too, potentially. So as they were evacuating south, they were getting attacked with like bombs, and roadblocks were set up to prevent people from evacuating south. So anyway, but you have that going on, and they gave like 24-hour notices and stuff like that. Now, what I heard through a few different sources is that weather has been the main reason why they haven't started yet, because they need good weather for example, drones to fly and support operations there. But this article from Jerusalem Post suggests a few other reasons. So I'm going to go over a few of those. What changed? A number of factors seem to have caused a delay, but sources have told the Jerusalem Post that one factor has been a growing concern that Hezbollah is waiting for the moment that most IDF ground forces are committed to Gaza to open a full front with the IDF in the north. So if that's the case, I don't know how many troops are in the south. I don't know how many troops are in the north, but it seems like there's a lot in each location. I don't know how long they would wait so that the quote unquote most number of IDF forces would be engaged in Gaza. I don't know if that's referring to like a week or two or like months into the war. So I don't know. But anyway, let's continue. In this narrative, the fact that Hezbollah did not engage at the start of the war, Saturday morning, and has kept its attacks on Israel at a fairly low threshold, does not prove that it is deterred, but it is part of an elaborate fake out to lure the IDF into a false sense of security, similar to what Hamas pulled off in the south. So I suppose that means like they're hoping that maybe Israel will be like, okay, I guess Hezbollah is not going to get involved in this war. I don't know. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense because, they've sent a bunch of troops up north and they're evacuating towns. So I don't think they're going to have that surprise. It's expected. Anyway, continuing. This will not stop the IDF from invading Gaza, but it may have caused a delay to better double check signs regarding Hezbollah's intentions, as well as to further reinforce the northern forces in case the worst comes to pass. So, and I don't know. I haven't heard anything about additional troop movements, because whenever usually, like I remember this as the Ukraine war was about to start, there were all sorts of videos of Russian troops and convoys and trains and stuff like that moving toward Ukraine, because tanks and armored vehicles, they don't just magically appear wherever the war is going to be. They have to get there somehow, and people are going to see it. And so in the day or two after the attack took place on the 7th of October, there were a lot of videos of self-propelled howitzers, like artillery and armor and armored personnel carriers and troops and stuff. There were a lot of videos of them going to these different places in the south and in the north. But what I'm saying is that I haven't seen anything else pop up since that time. Not to say that it's not happening, but so I don't know if they're waiting, if they're like assessing things and like, you know what, before we start this, let's make sure we have just maybe a few more battalions, brigades, divisions up here before we start in Gaza. So yeah, maybe that's what's happening. Maybe that's part of what's happening. But I know that they've said weather is like the main factor. Okay, so there's also a deepening recognition. There's also a deepening recognition in the IDF and at the political level that the IDF has not done anything like this in decades. Yeah. And that rushing in unprepared simply to more quickly satisfy the wider population's thirst for retribution could be a large mistake. In this perspective, the 2006 Second Lebanon War ground invasion was a complete mess, with the air power being the successful part, with both of the 2008 to 2009 and 2014 invasions of Gaza being more symbolic. In other words, with all of the many quote-unquote rounds of conflict, the IDF should not be overconfident about its talent at conducting large land invasion operations. Yeah. And I remember these times when they went into Gaza with these smaller conflicts. It was very limited. It's not on the same scale as what they're about to do here. They're essentially, it's like they're invading another country. There's only like about 2 million people here in the Gaza Strip, if I remember correctly. But relative to the size of Israel, it might as well be like Russia and Ukraine. Not trying to cast Israel as Russia. I'm just saying like size wise, something kind of like that. So And if they don't have a very good track record, they only had those smaller incursions into Gaza, which weren't really, you know, big ground operations. And if the 2006 war with Lebanon was a mess, I mean, just think of that like a football team, and their season hasn't gone that well. They've maybe had some ties, they've suffered some big losses, or just, you know what I mean? So yeah, maybe they're just like really making sure they haven't done something like this before. So maybe they're just like really taking the time making sure that they get it right as much as possible. I don't know. Okay. While achieving strategic surprise would be impossible given that Hamas started this war, the IDF would also like to achieve at least a tactical surprise against Hamas, which requires planning. And if you didn't understand that sentence, and I'm not trying to talk down anybody, but there's all different levels of people listening to this. That means that Israel wasn't able to initially surprise Hamas because they didn't start the war. They don't have like this grand strategy. They're responding to Hamas. Hamas attacked first, and then afterwards, Israel's like, okay, we're going to destroy you completely. So at this point, there's already war. War has been declared, but what Hamas doesn't know is exactly when they're going to actually start operations. So like there might be a certain day or a certain time of day. So that's like tactical, like the practical, right then and there reality of like when to surprise them. So they have to choose. They have to pick the right time to do that. Later in the article, also the Post has confirmed from many sources that no one has yet decided what will happen to Gaza after the IDF will supposedly top Hamas rule. Yeah, now that's a big problem. What's going to happen then? Because let's see. Let me look this up really quick. Hamas, Wikipedia. Okay, I'm going to do a shot in the dark. I think it was, let's see, 2014. When did they take control of Gaza? Okay, no, okay, 2007. Okay, so Hamas continued to advocate Palestinian armed resistance. Hamas won the 2006 Palestinian legislative election, gaining a majority in the Palestinian Legislative Council, and subsequently took control of Gaza Strip from Fatah in 2007. Okay, so they've been in control since 2007. So that's the better part of 20 years. Yeah, so what then? Who controls after that? And I would think that the only answer would be the Palestinian Authority, I guess. There was an article today saying that President Biden warned Israel not to occupy Gaza, like not to like administer it, at a government level. But then who? I can only assume that the only answer would be the Palestinian Authority. But if that doesn't work out for some reason, then what happens then? That's a big question. And I haven't seen any answers. Okay. The Washington Post. Now look at this. Israeli ground offensive in Gaza could be a bloodbath, analysts say. Okay. So this article right here, among other things, is why I think that this death toll is going to go up, because it seems all but certain that there is going to be a ground invasion, and then secondly, that it's going to be very deadly, both for the Israelis and for Hamas and Palestinians that live there. Okay, so what are the details to this? Israeli soldiers preparing for a ground offensive in the Gaza Strip will face a hellish thicket of tightly packed buildings, mines, and tunnels while hunting Hamas militants who blend in among civilians, a precarious situation that could cause immense human suffering and draw other countries into the war, said U.S. officials and analysts familiar with the conflict. Okay. Quote, I think they're going to go back. I think they're going to go back in heavy, and it's going to be a bloodbath for everybody, said Kenneth Frank McKenzie Jr., a retired Marine Corps general who served as the chief of U.S. Central Command until last year. Okay, so he thinks it's going to be really deadly, and I would trust his opinion. Guion Gentile, a retired Army colonel and military historian with the RAND Corporation, said that the scope of Israel's offensive is, quote, obviously going to be much larger, end quote, now than operations in recent years, and will come with challenges that the United States was able to avoid in some of its most intense urban combat, such as the November 2004 assault on Fallujah, Iraq. While that city of 250,000 people was isolated in a desert, and most civilians left before the U.S. offensive began, it will be more difficult for civilians to flee this time, Gentile said. Yeah, and the reason why, from what I understand, is civilians cannot cross into Israel, and Egypt will not let them go into Egypt, at least the last that I heard. So really, the only place that they can go is where the Israeli military told them to go, which is south of this line, about right here. So down over here. Obviously, there's going to be people, and this is always the case, whether it's a natural disaster or a war or whatever, people that will refuse to leave for a variety of different reasons. So, anyway, the ones that want to leave, they don't have very good options. All they can do is go down here. And as they have gone down here, some of them have been killed by Hamas because Hamas wants them to stay up here. So this is not a good time to be a Palestinian. But Hoffman also said that the challenges that Israeli soldiers will find in Gaza will be, quote unquote, exponentially greater than what U.S. troops faced in Fallujah. Hamas officials have claimed multi-year preparation and planning for their attack on Israel, he noted. And probably expect that the IDF would respond with a ground invasion. Yeah, because I'm telling you, I can't say for sure, but I really think that this is just a big plan. It's been prepared for years, not by Hamas, but by Iran. And I think it's a multi-phase plan, and it involves all these different groups, all the Iranian-backed terrorist groups, and of course, Iran itself. So, if that's the case, if they've been planning this for years, then I'm sure that they planned, like it says here, for a ground invasion. It's really bad. I would not want to be an Israeli soldier right now going into Gaza with that knowledge. Both sides are likely to use aerial drones, he said, possibly resulting in dogfights between them, with parallels to how crewed aircraft were used in earlier wars. Quote, in order to clear buildings, basements, and the extensive network of tunnels, they will have to dismount their infantry and initially fight soldier on soldier and block by block in the built-up areas. Special operations forces will be leaping ahead in surgical strikes to take out Hamas leadership and recover hostages. All right. Is that all I have from that? Yep. Okay. So we're in I think we're in a very intense moment right now before this starts. Once it does start, I don't think there's any going back. You know, um, I'd be interested to see, would Iran not attack if Israel didn't do a ground invasion? Because I feel like they're counting on this. You know, they really need them to do the ground invasion. But even if they don't, you know, they've been planning on this for years and years and years. And one of the reasons I think that this took place this year was because of the big protests in Israel, in the divide in Israeli society. And it's just like, this is the time. So if Israel didn't invade, I think it would probably still happen. It just wouldn't work out as well as Iran would like it to work out. But okay, so Times of Israel. Pentagon sends deployment notices to 2,000 U.S. troops over Israel-Hamas war. The Pentagon has sent, quote unquote, prepared to deploy orders to about 2,000 U.S. troops to be ready to respond to the Israel-Hamas war, two U.S. officials say, on the condition of anonymity to discuss a decision that has not been announced yet. The troops are set to cover a variety of support roles. So this is important. Support roles. Because if you're picturing, infantry or anything like that, combat arms, troops, it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. Such as additional medical support or explosive ordnance support, including providing additional security at gate crossings, one of the officials says. Now, like gate crossings in Israel? Now that would be interesting to have U.S. troops in Israel at gate crossings. That would be like probably most likely military police units. They will not be sent to Israel. Oh, they will not be sent to Israel, but could be sent to countries in the region, one of the officials says. So gate crossings where? Like, I don't know. If you know more about that, let me know. Put it in the comments below. Okay. Now, this happened. I don't have anything really to read from here, but there's been a terrorist attack in Belgium, in Brussels, where there was a man that killed 2 people in a shooting. So on the day of Intifada, on Friday, there was a French teacher that was killed, and then there was an Israeli diplomat or employee of the embassy over there in Beijing that was stabbed. But as far as I know, those were like the only 2 like attacks, like terrorist attacks. Everything else was like big protests and, clashes between different rallies, like pro-Palestinian and pro-Israeli rallies. But today, this was just a couple hours ago that this started coming up. There's an additional attack in Europe. So now there are 3 people that have been killed that I know of in Europe due to just like lone wolf attacks. These 2 in Brussels, and then the one in France, the teacher that was killed on the Global Day of Jihad. All right, and now I want to go to some of these posts on X. So this one's from the IDF official X account. It says, "This is real. Hamas is forcefully preventing their civilians from relocating to southern Gaza for their own safety." And it looks like this right here is some kind of barrier. You can't really tell. I doubt that those are vehicles. Whether they're vehicles or not, this is a barrier to stop vehicles from traveling down this road. And this, I don't know what I'm looking at here. I see there's like a space right here, but I don't know what I'm looking at there. There are videos though of basically explosions. I guess like IEDs. I don't know, where you have like a car explode as it's attempting to head south, and it's been said that that was as a result of Hamas attacking civilians as they're heading south. In fact, when it started happening, like the pro-Palestinian accounts were saying, "Oh, Israel is attacking citizens as they're trying to flee," but it turns out that no, it was Hamas trying to prevent people from evacuating south. Here's a video. There's been a bunch of rocket attacks today. Uh, one of which caused the Knesset to for them to go down to like the bunker, to the bomb shelter. So this happened today. Here's a video of, see that smoke right there? So keep an eye on that smoke, and then he's going to pan over, and you'll see how close that was to the Temple Mount. So, like, not like really, really close, but like relatively close. Yes. Just imagine what would have happened if this rocket had hit either Al Aqsa Mosque or the Dome of the Rock. And of course, it would have been, well, actually, I guess I can't say that, but most likely it would have been on accident. I wonder what the fallout from that would have been. There probably wouldn't be any fallout. They'd probably just be like, well, it's just a mistake. It's okay. We'll fix it. Anyway, there have been rockets that have been launched toward Jerusalem. It's not just Tel Aviv and Ashkelon and the southern communities, but I thought that this was interesting. This is from Instant News Alerts. Breaking: Syrian state media reporting explosions near Damascus, probable Israeli strikes. And I've seen a bunch of different people reporting this, so I wasn't going to pull all those up. But this is after the fact that the airports were struck in Damascus and Aleppo. So there's more, it seems, that's going on. More Israeli attacks on, I don't know, different targets in Syria. Here's an example of like alerts that were received. This is the Tel Aviv area. And you can see that this particular rocket attack encompassed a pretty large area. If you want, you can either for desktop or you can get this for your phone. There's this red alert system. This is from sevaadom.co.il. I'll put the link for it in the description below. But this is where you can get real-time alerts when there's rocket attacks. So I think I'm going to start monitoring this just for the fun of it. For some reason, for me, okay, because you see how it has these different languages up here. Whenever I do English, let me just show you what happens here. Like when you click on this, it's supposed to pull up a map, but I get 404 not found. And then whatever this means, I try to like figure out how to fix this, but I can't. So I have to, in case this happens to you too, I don't know if it's just like a general, like a website thing, or if it's just my computer. I click over here on the Hebrew. Okay. Hopefully you can tell these languages apart: Russian, Arabic, Spanish, and then there's Hebrew. I click on the Hebrew and then I just translate it to English, which translates not the map, unfortunately, but it translates the locations over here. And anywhere that it says Dan, that typically means Tel Aviv, the Tel Aviv area. And I actually talked about this with Rabbi Gerfine one time, and I think I'm going to be talking to him tomorrow. So I'm gonna be interested to see what he has to say, what his experience has been. So stay tuned for that. But anyway, it has all the attacks within the last 24 hours, and as you can see, there have been a lot of attacks. It seems to me like the majority have been around the Gaza Strip, right here, like in these smaller towns around here. But there have been some big ones. Like, look at this one right here. This one includes both Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. And this is probably the one that we were just looking at, where we saw the Dome of the Rock. Here. Let me do it like this. There we go. So this is Jerusalem, okay? Right here. Yerushalayim, Jerusalem. And so it looks like, and it's not even, it doesn't even look like it's Western Jerusalem. That's the part that has, that's like the mostly Israeli part, where you have Israeli government buildings and stuff like that. So it's kind of surprising that they would attack Eastern Jerusalem, because that's where the holy sites are. For them in particular, the Temple Mount, or the Dome of the Rock, and Al-Aqsa Mosque. So, but there were some rockets fired over that way. There were some, not in West Jerusalem, but in these other areas. And then look at the Tel Aviv area up here. And there were a number of attacks on Tel Aviv today, according to OSINT Defender. And you can verify it here, but I'm not going to. According to OSINT Defender, the city of Tel Aviv in central Israel is under rocket attack by Hamas in the Gaza Strip for at least the fourth time in the last 24 hours. So they've really, really been attacking Tel Aviv today. Of course, I haven't really followed this too closely. Only what I've seen on X. But yeah. So anyway, this is just it's a really neat tool that you can use if you want to follow this. And you can actually get there for like Chrome, there's an extension, and you can get this, and it'll have like a little pop-up whenever there's an attack, and you can have like, it has a whole selection of different sounds that can play whenever it happens. So some of you may or may not be interested in that, but okay. Institute for the Study of War. What was it that I wanted to show here? Okay, you can see, so this is as of Sunday, but you can see that there have been small arms, these icons right here with the rifles, clash, small arms combat. There has been small arms combat throughout the West Bank. That's another area that everybody's looking at. The biggest threat seems to be from Hezbollah in the north, but there's also a lot of interest in what's going on in the West Bank. And so there has been a bunch of violence there. All right. Was that it? Oh yeah, here's the northern border with Lebanon, and you can see there's been small arms combat, and what does that stand for? Anti-tank fire are these like diamond icons. There's 3 of those. There's a drone right there. So there's been a little bit of stuff going on there. There's been a little bit going on in the West Bank. And then there's been a lot more happening, obviously, around the Gaza Strip. I think that those are, let's see, those red ones are rocket attacks. Oh, so these must be like communities around the Gaza Strip. Yeah. Okay. So that's basically what's happening, and we're just in a very dangerous time right now. And it seems like it's going to go the worst possible way it can, because Israel is going to do what it has to do, and Iran is going to do what it's been planning to do. And just everything's kind of coming to a head. It seems like it's inevitable. And so if I were you, and this is what I'm doing, I'm making sure that my life is right as much as possible. I want to go to the temple more, and just in general be prepared. It doesn't mean that we have to do anything extreme, but isn't it just common sense that when you see something that looks like the final war, maybe it's a good time to do last minute preparations in your spiritual life to make sure that you're ready for whenever Christ comes and whatever takes place. I'm afraid that there's too many people that, they're being given like the biggest red flag and the biggest warning possible in what's happening here, and it's still going over their heads. Whether it's somebody that's more on the worldly side and they just don't think about these things, they don't care about these things, they don't believe in prophecy, they don't think that there's going to be a second coming, or people that are members of the church that think that they have everything figured out based on their own private understanding of the scriptures, and they think that it can't possibly happen now because XYZ, ABC, LPQY have to happen first. Even though that's not how the general authorities talk, and they'll be caught unprepared. Hopefully not, but it seems that way. So with that, I'm going to finish this off by covering this misconception I was talking about. We have to be righteous enough, or the world has to be wicked enough before Christ will return. Okay, this is from Joseph Fielding Smith, Doctrines of Salvation, Volume 3, page 457. When we become ripe in iniquity, then the Lord will come. I get annoyed sometimes. Now, hold on. That may sound like, oh, well, it's not us being righteous. It has to be us, the world wicked enough. Just wait. I get annoyed sometimes at some of our elders who, when speaking, say that the Lord will come when all become righteous enough to receive him. The Lord is not going to wait for us to get righteous. When he gets ready to come, he is going to come when the cup of iniquity is full. And if we are not righteous, then it'll just be too bad for us. For we will be classed among the ungodly, and we will be as stubble to be swept off the face of the earth. For the Lord says, wickedness shall not stand. Do not think the Lord delays his coming, for he will come at the appointed time. And that's the key right there. He will come at the appointed time. Not the time which I have heard some preach when the earth becomes righteous enough to receive him. I have heard some men in positions and places of trust in the church preach this, men who are supposed to be acquainted with the word of the Lord, but they failed to comprehend the scriptures. Christ will come in the day of wickedness when the earth is ripe in iniquity and preparing for the cleansing, and as the cleanser and purifier, he will come, and all the wicked will be as stubble and will be consumed. All right, Joseph Fielding Smith, selections from Answers to Gospel Questions, page 139. The millennium will come when the Lord decides that the cup of iniquity is full. He will come to cleanse the earth, and in that day the veil of the covering of the temple, which hideth the earth, shall be taken off, and all flesh shall see me together, saith the Lord. And then Bruce R. McConkie, Millennial Messiah, pages 26 to 27. The time for the second coming of Christ is fixed and certain, as was the hour of his birth. It will not vary as much as a single second from the divine decree. He will come at the appointed time. The millennium will not be ushered in prematurely because men turn to righteousness, nor will it be delayed because iniquity abounds. So it seems to me, from both Joseph Fielding Smith and Bruce R. McConkie, that there's that key phrase, appointed time. There's a fixed time when he will come. And it seems that it will coincide with the earth being wicked. So it's probably, I doubt that it's like the Lord watching day by day, and he has like some kind of like sin meter, sinometer, waiting for it to reach a certain measurement. And he's like, okay, this is it. We hit 100. Now it's time. I think it's more that he knows how the history of the world is going to go. He has foreknowledge. He's above time. It doesn't take away our agency, but he knows how things are going to go, and he's above time. And so with his order, the way that he's, timed the entire earth from when Christ came to a second coming. There's just certain times according to whatever his order is, and that the second coming is a set time, but it corresponds with a time in human history where the world is very wicked. That's what I get from this. I think that's right. But they both say that there is an appointed time, and Bruce R. McConkie goes on to say that there's a fixed and a certain hour that he will come. All right. Well, that's going to be it for this one. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. Like this video if you liked it. Leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.